Rent-A-Bomb is a vehicle rental agency that was formed in 1979. Since their inception, Rent-A-Bomb has found success in the rental car market and has been able to expand their operations across 12 locations within 3 states, those being Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. Now, Rent-A-Bomb have forced their place into the market by providing vehicles that have been in use for multiple years but can be rented quite cheaply. The purpose of our presentation today is to analyse whether the company has created a sustainable competitive advantage for themselves, which is defined as when a firm is able to create greater value for customers in comparison to rival businesses. This competitive advantage is created through thoroughly examining the internal and external environments and ultimately coming up with an appropriate business level strategy as well as exploiting any capabilities. Today, I will be covering Rent-A-Bomb's internal environment, but focusing mainly on their core competencies. Taking over from me will be Tom, who will discuss the rental car industry and a bit about their external environment. Then Zach will compare Rent-A-Bomb with their competitors, and finally Izzy will conclude while discussing their business level strategy. The internal environment is composed of elements within the organisation that can affect the choices, activities and decisions of the organisation. It encompasses the climate, culture, work processes, members and management. Now these elements, or resources, are what builds a business's capabilities, with their strongest capabilities being their core competencies. Now the core competencies of an organisation can serve as a potential source of competitive advantage over rivals. But in order to gain and utilise this competitive advantage, the internal environment must be understood thoroughly, with a key factor being understanding customer demands. Now, in the case of Rent-A-Bomb, 2 core competencies include their great customer service, but also providing vehicles at an easily accessible price point. I'll be focusing on the latter in greater detail. But in order to analyse the core competency of accessible pricing, we'll be reviewing Jay Barney's VRIN model. Now, resources that can bring value can be a source of competitive advantage. Value for the customer is created through savings when hiring a vehicle. This is in comparison to paying substantially more at a competitor. Now, secondly, the rarity of the capability must be established. The vehicles utilised in the car rental market by a good majority of businesses tend to be mostly up to date. However, Rent-A-Bomb have created a niche for themselves, wherein their models are not the newest. Now, this provides for a number of allowances within price flexibility. Third, the strategy undertaken by Rent-A-Bomb has the potential to be imitated. However, competitors have not taken on this strategy, which has left Rent-A-Bomb in a unique position. Lastly, the service offered must be compared to see if it can be substituted. The service itself of supplying a car to be rented has provided a number of options within the market. However, Rent-A-Bomb have the upper hand when it comes substituting on price, where they are ahead of the competition as they can provide vehicles at a cheaper rate.
Hi there, my name's Tom, and in this portion of the project we'll be analysing how attractive it is to enter into the Australian car rental industry using Porter's 5 competitive forces that shape strategy. So first of all, we've got the threat of new entry. So for the industry we're looking in, there's a fairly medium to high level threat of new entry. There's a low level of regulation and only a small to medium amount of competition. One factor to take into consideration is that this is a mature stage of the industry's life. New entrants mean pre-existing organisations will need to maintain low prices and raise their market share to ensure they remain in power. A significant barrier to entry into the industry is the initial high capital requirements, with new businesses having to purchase vehicles as well as the infrastructure associated with running a new organisation. Next of all is the power of suppliers. So this industry has a relatively low power of suppliers. The majority of the supply needed are suppliers of cars that will be rented off. While the supplier group doesn't depend on rental services for revenue, there are many options of suppliers that can be switched to if needed. There's also no differentiation between supply groups, and cars will be very similar across different suppliers. So next of all, we've got power of buyers. So the fact that the industry is relatively standardized means that buyers have a moderate to high amount of power. There's minimal switching costs for buyers to change from one vendor to another, and equivalent products will always be present. One factor that does restrict buyer power is that there are many buyers, and very rarely would a buyer buy in quantity of more than one car. There's also no ability of a buyer to produce a rental car service themselves, which also limits buyer power. The buyer group for this industry is fairly price sensitive, and it is likely buyers will shop around before settling on a car rental service. So next we've got the threat of substitute, and then in this industry there's a high threat of substitute. So rapid technological advancements has led to rideshare services like Uber experiencing quick growth, and they're a large substitute to car rentals. So getting from point A to point B can be done with a lot less effort using these services, and depending on the need, it is often a lot cheaper. About 60% of market share for the Australian car rental industry belongs to households, and rideshare companies also market towards these households. So that's a big threat as a competitive substitute. As well as that, public transport services and driving one's own vehicle are applicable substitutes. So next, there's rivalry amongst competitors, and in this industry, the rivalry amongst competitors is again moderate to high. There's many different competitors in a highly concentrated market, and the top 4 competitors hold 70% of the market share. So dominant players will have rivalry amongst each other, and they can compete on things like price, quality, and accessibility. As most of the rivalry is to do with pricing, however, this can erode profitability. So ultimately, the car rental industry is not attractive to invest in. Almost all of Porter's forces are unattractive, and pre-existing organisations are unlikely to succeed or grow any further in this industry.
Hello, I'm Zach, and I'm going to take you through the competitor analysis section. Based on IBISWorld's findings, we were able to identify the 4 key critical success factors which are imperative in being successful in the car rental industry in Australia. These 4 were the ability to keep an up-to-date fleet, the ease of access for consumers, companies' products having a low running cost, and having a loyal customer base. We have chosen to specifically narrow down and focus onto the ease of access and the ability to keep an up-to-date fleet, as this was deemed to be the most important in the eyes of the consumer. So what does it mean to have an up-to-date fleet? Industry players that are able to maintain an up-to-date fleet are better able to continually attract customers. Therefore, managers must be aware of the best times to trade in or sell older vehicles to make room for a new vehicle. In terms of the ease of access for consumers, car rental companies need to be able to design online platforms where clients can quickly and conveniently locate and book rental cars, as this means they are more likely to attract new customers and retain their existing customers. We will now look further in depth at Rent-A-Bomb's competition through the use of the strategic group map. Based on data of IBISWorld, we have collated the key major competitors based off market share and plotted them against Rent-A-Bomb. The major competitor in the industry was Hertz Investments with 26.7% market share. The majority of Hertz's income was generated through its vehicle leasing and rentals, but it also acquires a side income through its selling of pre-used and pre-owned vehicles. Hertz has also acquired other well-established rental car brands such as FlexiCar and Ace Rentals. Due to Hertz's convenient business model, whereby you can pre-book, rock up to a store, or even find a FlexiCar on the side of the road, this means that we've placed Hertz very high in terms of its ease of access. In terms of its up-to-date fleet, Hertz are very strong at this, as they cater for a wide variety of vehicles and tend to offer newer and older models for all different consumer sets. Secondly comes in Avis, with just again over a quarter of the market share with 25.6%. This places them in a very similar stead to Hertz, as they have a similar range and buying power as well as many varying access points. However, they do not possess a FlexiCar equivalent, but in contrast, Avis implemented recently new capabilities to their mobile app, further improving their ease of access. Smaller stores such as Red Spot Rentals and Alpha Rentals do not score so well, as they are both quite smaller scale, therefore there are less opportunities to access their small scale fleet. They are also relatively new competitors in the market, however they have had significant growth. Alpha Rentals are quickly expanding outside of the 5 states they are currently located in. Rent-A-Bomb, unfortunately, does not score very favourably in the mapping in terms of its ability to keep an up-to-date fleet. This is because its business model consists of being a cheaper alternative in the market, whereby they tend to have older model cars for a cheaper price, which is at its core deliberate strategy. This may be an issue for Rent-A-Bomb, as one of the critical success factors identified by IBISWorld was the need to keep and maintain up-to-date vehicles. In terms of their ease of access, they are also somewhat limited in location numbers in comparison to their major competitors, as they only have 9 locations in Victoria, as opposed to Hertz, who have 19. Overall, there is room to improve for Rent-A-Bomb in this industry, as it continues to expand its accessibility and better markets its older, cheaper fleet.
A company's competitive strategy can deal with the specifics of the organisation's overall goals when competing within the market. Currently, the business strategy that Rent-A-Bomb uses is a broad, low-cost provider strategy. In order to utilise this strategy, there are 2 requirements that must be met. This is providing the product or service at a lower price than competitors and reaching a wide target market. In the case of Rent-A-Bomb, the company is achieving overall lower costs than their rivals, as Rent-A-Bomb are pricing their products online for $46 per day to rent, while the market leaders have priced their products online for $115 on a relatively comparable product. Rent-A-Bomb strives to be a low-cost provider of rental cars through using an older fleet of cars. Since Rent-A-Bomb only stock this older fleet of cars and older generation vehicles in comparison to organisations such as Hertz and Avis, Rent-A-Bomb clients would be frugal and price-sensitive consumers. As I stated before, Rent-A-Bomb certainly stock cheaper vehicles than their consumers, as some are bought second-hand and others are an older generation. This allows Rent-A-Bomb to offer cheaper prices as the car value is lower and insurance tends to be lower. Additionally, Rent-A-Bomb have fewer stores to pick the cars up from in comparison to the industry leaders such as Avis and Hertz, saving money on rent. Is Rent-A-Bomb using the right business strategy? Let's look at when the overall low-cost broad strategy should be used and see if Rent-A-Bomb is implementing the strategy for the appropriate market situation. A low-cost strategy is best used when price competition among rivals is high. Focusing on Rent-A-Bomb, their competitors are all offering similar or even identical vehicles to rent out, causing very high competition among sellers. Also, the low-cost strategy is best used when there are low switching costs for consumers. In the rental car industry, there are similar offerings of cars which can cause buyers to become wary of vehicles and rent from the company that offer the best discount or vehicles for the lowest price. Offering low-cost vehicles will bring appeal to Rent-A-Bomb's business when buyers are price-sensitive and very frugal. Therefore, Rent-A-Bomb's decision to use an overall low-cost strategy may help Rent-A-Bomb with their competitive advantage in the market of Australian car rentals.
In conclusion, today I discussed the way that Rent-A-Bomb have created a competitive advantage for themselves through low rental pricing.
I assessed the level of attractiveness of the industry using Porter's 5 competitive forces that shape strategy.
I illustrated where Rent-A-Bomb sits in comparison to its competitors using the key critical success factors identified.
I analysed their business level strategy and came to the conclusion that Rent-A-Bomb use a low-cost focus strategy.
Overall, our analysis provided us with the implication that although Rent-A-Bomb may have a competitive advantage in its market niche, this does not translate into the overall rental car industry of Australia.